Tonight, it's an exclusive, in-depth look at the new 207-mile-an-hour Mercedes SLR McLaren, the new Ford Focus, and the new parking nightmare that might just catch you out.
This is the new supercar from Mercedes, the SLR McLaren. It has a supercharged 5.5-litre V8 and 626 horsepower. It will hit 62 in 3.8 seconds, and if you can find a runway long enough, it won't stop until it hits VMAX, 207 miles an hour.
I am the spy.
The SLR costs £313,000. But names like Robbie Williams, Rowan Atkinson and Thierry Henry have all been queuing up to buy one. Tonight, we'll reveal why, as we get privileged access to the exclusive customer experience. And I'll be giving the SLR its most thorough test yet. Don't go away.
The Ford Focus is an amazingly successful car. Since 1998, Ford has shifted over 4 million of them. It's been Car of the Year on both sides of the Atlantic, and it's won no less than 75 other car awards. Oh, and it's also been Britain's best-selling car for the last 6 years. And for good reason. Its sharp, wedgy profile still looks fresh, it's always been good value, and above all else, it's what it was when it was launched all those years ago. Great fun to drive. But you can't stand still in the volume car game, and now it's time for the new Focus. And this is it. And at first glance, it looks as if Ford have played it safe. It's a sort of softer, more bloated version of the original styling themes. But compared with the old car, well, it looks a bit boring. But more of that later. The big question is it as fun to drive? And where better to test it than the delightful Tuscan countryside, somewhere with a beautiful landscape, marvellous cuisine, and most importantly, some of the most challenging roads in the world. Perfect for finding flaws in any chassis. Now, Ford's rivals have recently smartened up their act. The Astra and the Golf are now much sharper to drive. I've just recently driven the much more expensive but similar-sized BMW 1 Series, and that really is a great drive. And I have to say, with the same size 2-litre diesel engine, the new Focus is nearly as good. Everything works well. The seating position is just right, the gear change is smooth and slick, the car's very easy to drive. The steering wheel, you've got 3 different modes, you've got Comfort, Standard and Sports in terms of the weighting. That can be selected on the dashboard menu. And the answer to the big question, is it as good to drive as the old one, is a resounding yes. In fact, it's better. The chassis is sharper whilst being more compliant over bumpy roads, the cabin is quieter, and the new electronic power steering gives you all the feedback you need. But Ford haven't only made their bestseller better to drive, they've also managed to improve on some of the old car's weak points. The old Focus was a visual catastrophe inside with its cheap plastics and oddball layout. I'm pleased to say the new version uses a more conventional design, better quality materials, and has a much more luxurious feel. Nothing feels clumsy anymore. In fact, it's now easily on a par with, say, the new Golf. But its real party trick is it's much bigger than the car it replaces. There's more space in the back, and by pushing the windscreen forward, the cabin feels more airy. But the new Focus is also more accommodating on the outside as well. The new bulbous nose has been specially designed to be pedestrian-friendly in an accident. So, when it goes on sale in January at prices slightly lower than the old one, the Focus will still be at the top of the class, along with BMW's new 1 Series. If you're more interested in prestige and style than practicality, go for the BMW. It will be my choice. But if you need to cart kids and luggage about, the more roomy Focus is the best way to do it. So what about those looks? Well, initially I thought it was a tad boring, but having spent a day with the car, it's kind of grown on me. But I'll tell you what the upshot is. It's a great package. It's comfortable, it's very well refined, it drives well, but more importantly, It's going to be great value for money, and that's why you're going to see thousands on the road.
Now there's still time to enter our latest competition to win one of Britain's best Ford Capris. It's this minter of a 2.8 injection. It's only done around 30,000 miles and it could be yours. To be in with a chance of winning it, just answer this question. What is the Capri named after? Is it A, an Italian island, B, a British seaside resort, or C, a Chinese village? Call 09015 339955 to enter, or text GEAR plus A, B or C to 81555. And we'll show you this lot again at the end of the programme. Lines close at midday on Monday the 25th of October, and you can also enter via our website.
The Mercedes-Benz SLR costs £250,000. There's a very good reason for that huge expense, and it's all down to this badge. The SLR isn't built alongside other Mercedes in Stuttgart. It's built in Woking, Surrey. The Germans knew that the best place to build a supercar wasn't in their homeland, but here in Britain, by a company who are past masters in building supercars and also Formula One legends. Mercedes' motor racing partner, McLaren. McLaren take building cars very seriously. This is their new technology centre, rumoured to have cost £200 million, and we're the first and only cameras to have been invited in. The corridors are so wide that they're called streets, and all of them lead up to a naturally lit main boulevard that's decorated with just a handful of six-figure price sculptures, and of course, Kimi Räikkönen's Formula One car. It is by far and away the coolest factory in the world. The meticulous attention to detail that has won 11 drivers and 8 constructors' world championships is now back in the car business. As a customer, you're welcome to go and see your SLR being hand-built by McLaren technicians on what must be the world's best-kept production line. As ever, the magic is in the details. There are 37 patents pending just on the way the SLR is built. The entire body shell is made of carbon fibre composites, and underneath is the world's first production car to have a carbon fibre crash structure which should behave like a Formula One car in a collision. The brakes are Formula One style carbon with a ceramic surface, and in the wet they momentarily apply themselves to remove the film of water that builds up on the discs. You can even watch your car go through stringent wet weather testing. Current colour options are Crystal Laurit Silver and Crystal Galaxit Black. The special paint contains larger than normal metal particles for a deeper lustre. Naturally, there's a car phone. Just press the spanner for a direct line to the factory should you ever require assistance. You can't buy an SLR at your local Merc dealer. Instead, McLaren take you to a special chamber to finalise your exact spec. You might fancy some 19-inch alloys for an extra £7,000. Red aniline racing seats for another £7,000. And what about an £8,500 SLR watch? Then you'd have to write out a cheque for £336,000. Perhaps the most vital part of the SLR experience is the personal induction, because everything on this car has multiple settings.
Oh, drive it. I want to sit in it. Ooh. So I presume we've got the normal electric seat movements.
Yeah, you can adjust the seats in 6 directions, fore and aft, and each seat is custom made for each customer.
Oh, are they?
Select.
Oh. And steering wheel's a bit low. That's
steering wheel you can adjust with a column. It's electrically adjustable.
Ups and downs and outs. You get the right driving position. And then you want to start it. So key's on the right-hand side.
Turn the key to its second position.
The dials all go jing, jing, jing.
That goes through its start-up sequence. You flip the lid on the gear controller.
On the top here?
Yeah, and the start button. Gives you that real wow factor. Makes it an event when you start the car.
Fighter plane. Oh. How do I switch it off again then?
So you just turn the ignition to its...
Oh, you don't press the button again?
No, you don't press the button. You just turn the ignition to its zero position.
Oh, just starting it was nice. But before I can drive it, there are more controls. What are these great dials in the middle? And this is all about the gear change, is it?
The dials in the centre. First of all, you have 3 modes. You have a sport mode in automatic mode, which is for everyday use. You have a comfort mode, which starts the car off in second gear and changes the gears a lot earlier.
What was it, tricky conditions and stuff?
Conditions. Then you have a manual mode, so you can change the gears manually with the touch step movement on the gear lever or with the buttons behind the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Then when you're in manual mode, you have 3 modes. You have a sport, a super sport, and a race.
These 3, well, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. When you really want to wring the maximum power out of that engine on the racetrack, you can do.
Is there that much difference then between what?
Yeah, it changes
sport, super sport and race.
Yeah, it changes the gear shift times, makes it a lot quicker.
What's under these? What else have we got? SLR.
This under here is you've got the full navigation system.
And what's this little funny thing in the middle here?
That's for what's called the air brake, which basically optimises and changes the aerodynamics of the vehicle. What you have is you have an automatic mode here and a manual mode and a test. Basically, the test mode is great. If you're sat in traffic and you really want to pose and show off with the car, you can flip it down and hold it. The air brake pops up to 65 degrees.
Right. Well, I think I've got it sussed enough.
OK, off you go.
Thanks. I know that there's a 626 horsepower supercharged V8 lurking under that fabulous long bonnet that reaches out in front of you. And yes, I know that there's ceramic face carbon fibre brakes ready to haul the speed off should I need them. But sitting here, dawdling along at, 30 miles an hour, it doesn't feel like any other supercar that I've been in. Apart perhaps from the rumbling of those side exhausts just in front of me, you've no idea that you're in anything other than a top-of-the-range, luxurious Grand Tourer. Until you get a bit of a clear road ahead of you and decide to use the throttle. And the whole world suddenly goes blurred. And you suddenly realise, I better try those brakes out, because I suddenly realise I'm going a bit faster than I should do on the public roads. And it is just a car that is a tale of two halves. It is perhaps the first ever Super Tourer. It defines a new category. But apart from that acceleration, it's probably the brakes that are the most impressive. At 60 miles an hour, you can just slam on. You check your mirror, you see that the extra boot lid has come up to help stability under heavy braking to keep the rear down. But the car just stops at incredibly short distances. There was some criticism of earlier models that they were too sharp, but I find the pedal feel of this car now to be really good.
The Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren really is a supercar you could drive every day. But I couldn't help but wonder how that usability would transfer to handling on a track. But unfortunately, with just a day to play with this particular SLR, we didn't have time to find out. Until, that is, we asked for another one. So join us in a moment to see how well a 300 grand car burns.
Getting a parking ticket on a public road is a frustrating affair at best, but at least you know about it there and then. And it's all regulated. The tickets have to be handed to you in person or stuck on your car.
But now there's a more sinister development on the parking scene. Private enforcement companies are issuing parking tickets in the post. You don't know about your alleged misdemeanour at the time. The first you hear about it is when an official-looking document pops through your letterbox demanding money days or even weeks later. Companies are using this new tactic in private car parks and, more disconcertingly, in private roads. Here's just one example of one company in one place.
This is Forbury Road in Reading. Loads of people use it as a convenient pick-up and drop-off point for Reading Station. In fact, you have to drive down it to get to the station's official short-term car park. But the road's actually privately owned by the Prudential, who don't like people stopping on it, and employ parking control firm OPC to police it. They've put up signs telling people it's private land, but most are in small print. Some are easily confused with other signs or on the wrong side of the road. So, not surprisingly, some people don't know they've done anything wrong until they're contacted by post.
Pulled over to where that bay is there on the double yellow lines, let my mother into the car, took about 5 seconds to do that, and then took off. I knew no difference. I pulled up to the junction there where that car is. Looking in my rear view mirror, there was a guy stood in the road, back down there about 10 metres, filming the back of my car.
The next thing Mark knew about it was 6 weeks later when he received this letter demanding an £80 fine. But how on earth did OPC know where he lived? Well,
having taken a photo of the car, OPC then contact the DVLA, hand over a form and a fee of £2.50, and they will get the name and address of the car's owner. It is a little-known fact that the DVLA will disclose these details to anyone with reasonable cause to know them. And it seems that a parking enforcement company has reasonable cause. Now, I'm pretty certain that I would not want these people knowing where my car and I live.
So whatever gives a private company like OPC the right to do all this? We asked them.
Contractual law.
OK, can you explain that to me?
When you enter, for example, this premise, there are signs there that inform you what the terms and conditions are. OK? That sign, as well as it being a sign, is also a contract. It's a contract to which you've agreed to enter into between OPC and yourself, if you're the driver.
So, is what's happening here actually legal? Well, we got a lawyer to come along and tell us.
By law, if the company wanted to set out the basis of an agreement, then they'd have to make it clear what they were charging for.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that is clear?
It's doubtful that anybody passing this sign would have any opportunity to read it.
One person was even done when they stopped to read one of the signs, and they do take some reading.
It is far from clear which bits are covered by the parking restrictions. Not clear whether they are suggesting that it's the hatched area there or it's an area within here.
Should you decide not to pay OPC's demand, they threaten to take you to court. What does our lawyer think of that?
The court will, I think, be concerned that the company doesn't have the statutory power, at least seemingly, to impose this kind of a penalty.
This seems to be borne out by the fact that OPC have never yet taken anyone to court over one of their Forbury Road tickets. So, what should you do if you get one?
Well, I think I'd wait and see. I think that it's questionable whether or not the company concerned will want to take the matter to court. They'll incur substantial charges of doing it.
Be warned, though, companies can enforce their parking tickets in private car parks, where it's more obvious that you're entering into an agreement. As for the DVLA, they told us they were happy to hand over addresses to private companies like OPC because unauthorised parking can be a nuisance, and it's down to the courts to decide whether the fines are legal or not.
It's time to see whether the 207-mile-an-hour Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren is a real supercar. It's time for the track.
Look, you've got to see this. I've got an official letter from Mercedes-Benz. Please do not disengage any of the electronic safety features at any time. Sorry, Rob. My finger slipped.
The Mercedes SLR of the 50s stood for Sporty Light Racer, but this SLR at nearly 1,800 kilos is best described as a bit of a handful. You certainly know there's a lot of weight underneath you. And you understand why it's got a stiff car on the roads, but it's perhaps not even stiff enough here out on the track. When I'm trying to find the limits, it begins to roll, you think the back's going to go, but the steering isn't that communicative. So you don't actually know when it's going to go through your hands, you only know through your arse. In the end, once you've got it really, really sideways, then
then you know where the back end is. It's the halfway in between series, which I'm not quite so keen on. But all the time it's sideways, it's got a very strong feeling it wants to straighten itself and spin back the other way in a bit of a tank slapper. So I'm never quite as happy as normal when I'm power sliding a car through the corners. Once you've kicked it through that nervous middle part of its handling and got the rear end stuck out, it's brilliant. One problem I've noticed with these little paddle shifts is that when I'm cornering, I accidentally change up when I don't want to. Oh, that awesome engine really makes this car. The brakes, fantastic brakes. And certainly on a racetrack, they're magnificent. Even cornering with the brakes on, no kickback through the brake pedal, ease off the power, get the nose in, again the weight of the car, you need to back off and get it tucked into the corners. But even that, there's very little understeer really for such a big car. It does turn in very well. If only the steering had a bit more feel. If only perhaps I could have a sports suspension settings for track use. This would be a mighty car. As it is, it's just a mighty Mercedes.
Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. The SLR has awesome credentials, but as this vigorous wheel turning shows, it doesn't quite have the ultimate handling poise required to be hailed as the definitive supercar. That title remains with McLaren's other road car effort, a car that has just 1 more horsepower but does a record-breaking 241 miles an hour. It is, of course, my all-time favourite, the magnificent F1.
Next week, testing Britain's most economical new cars. Are they as economical as they make out? And the car Tiff's been waiting for, the new Porsche 911.
200 young hopefuls are whittled down to just 10 would-be champions. And with the help of some of the biggest names in the ring, we begin the search for a new star in Boxing Academy, starting tonight at 10 on 5.